A mother lion was surrounded by hyenas, but the one who stepped in to save her broke every rule of nature. As the sun went down behind the rocks of Red Canyon, a mother lion stood frozen, her baby pressed against her chest, surrounded by hyenas, waiting for the moment she would fall. Every instinct told her this was the end. But just as the night came in, the ground began to shake. What came out from the dust was not a hunter, not a friend, and not something anyone would expect. What happened next would change the life of this family forever. The sun was going down the way it always did over Red Canyon, slow, stubborn, and beautiful enough to make you forget how quickly a night can turn dangerous. The sky burned in shades of copper and bruised purple, and the wind moved through the dry grass like a quiet hand combing through hair. Far out past the visitor roads, past the last camera tower and the warning signs, the land opened into a wide bowl of bushes and stone, where the animals lived as close to wild as this country could offer them. Luna should have been farther east, closer to the pride's usual resting ridge, where the rocks held warmth and the smell lines were familiar. But hunger does strange things to a mother. She was 6 years old, a golden-brown lioness with a small notch in her left ear, and the kind of eyes that didn't waste emotion. Her body had gotten thinner over the last few weeks. Every rib not quite visible but close. The way a good coat can't fully hide the truth underneath. Nursing did that. Worry did that. And tonight the weight of both sat on her shoulders like a second backbone. Ash, her cub, was tucked between her front legs, small enough that the grass could hide him if he didn't move. Young enough that he still smelled like milk and dust and the soft warmth of new beginnings. He was barely old enough to understand the world beyond warmth and shadow. His paws were too big for his body, his ears a little too round, his eyes still holding that faint, unsure brightness of a life that had not yet learned what it meant to be afraid. But Luna knew. She'd known fear long before she ever became a mother. Fear of drought. Fear of rivals. Fear of the moment when your own strength doesn't match the size of the threat in front of you. She knew what it sounded like when a night changed its mind. It started with the silence. The birds had stopped calling. Even the insects seemed to pull their music inward. The wind still moved, but it moved differently, less playful, more careful, as if the land itself didn't want to give away a position. Luna lifted her head, nostrils opening wide, tasting the air. The smell of the day's kill still clung to her muzzle, iron and fresh meat, a promise she'd tried to keep for her cub. The dead animal lay behind them, half hidden in a dip between two boulders, the ribs shining like pale fingers. She dragged it as far as she could, but dragging only made a trail, and some trails were invitations. She had made a mistake. Not a clumsy mistake, not a foolish one. The kind of mistake that happens when a mother calculates with a heart that refuses to be cold. The fences here were strong. The reserve was built on the idea that boundaries could be trusted. But a storm 2 nights ago had torn through Red Canyon like a fist. Lightning had broken a dead pine tree. A flash flood had cut new scars into the dry gullies. Somewhere along the edge, metal had bent and old earth had shifted. The humans would fix it when they found it. They always did. But animals don't live on when, they live on now. Luna had chased a pronghorn that wandered too close to the wrong edge of the habitat. She'd followed it beyond the familiar ridge, beyond the smell of her pride, into a stretch of land where the rocks looked the same but smelled different. Sage and dry cedar and something else. She'd made the kill quickly, as if speed could erase the risk. And then she'd turned back toward home. And that was when she realized she wasn't alone. At first, it was only a sound, soft, almost playful, like a laugh carried on the wind. It didn't belong to the canyon. It didn't belong to the birds. It belonged to Teeth. Luna rose in one smooth motion, the way a lioness can look like calm, while her muscles turned to wire. Ash pushed his face into her chest, sensing her change, and she lowered her head to nudge him tighter between her legs. The first hyena appeared at the edge of the grass, just beyond a cluster of mesquite. Spotted coat, sloped shoulders, eyes that caught the last light and threw it back cold. Then a second, then a third, stepping out like shadows, deciding to become real. They didn't rush. They didn't need to. Hyenas didn't waste energy the way panic did. They measured. They watched. They waited for weakness the way a crack waits for pressure. Luna's lips lifted from her teeth in a warning she didn't bother to decorate with sound. A lioness roar was expensive. Air and strength and confidence. Tonight she couldn't afford to spend anything she didn't have. Behind her, Ash made a small sound, more question than cry. Luna answered without turning, a low rumble in her throat. A command made of instinct, not language. Stay. More hyenas came. 10, then more. They came out from the deepening dusk in small groups, circling, closing gaps, positioning themselves like they'd practiced it. Their bodies moved with that eerie coordination that made them feel less like individuals, and more like a single mind with many mouths. Each one kept a safe distance from Luna's claws, but not too safe. Close enough to test her. Close enough to promise what would happen when her strength finally dipped. Luna's tail flicked once, sharp, impatient. Her ears pinned back, then forward, tracking the smallest movement. She stepped sideways, keeping Ash behind her, never allowing her body to open even a tiny bit of space. Her paws sank slightly into the dust. The ground was dry and loose here. Bad footing for a fight that might become desperate. The hyenas were not just hunting. They were erasing. A mother lion and her cub meant future competition. Future kills stolen. Future territory challenged. And a lone lioness thin from nursing, away from her pride, was the kind of opportunity the savanna wrote legends about. Except this wasn't Africa. This was Arizona. Red Canyon, a sanctuary where humans watched from towers with heat scopes and radios and rules, believing their management could keep old instincts civilized. But instincts didn't care where the fence posts stood. Somewhere far off, beyond the rise of rock, a faint beep echoed, a distant sensor on a service road, a reminder that people existed. But it was far enough to mean nothing, like hearing thunder when the rain hasn't reached you yet. The hyenas tightened the circle. One bold young one darted closer, quick as a thrown stone, snapping its jaws at the air near Luna's back leg. Luna spun and struck, her paw slashing through space with a sound like tearing cloth. The hyena leaped back just in time, teeth clicking shut on nothing. The others responded with that awful giggle laugh, not joy, but hunger, pretending to be amusement. Luna held her ground, but she felt it, the drain. Every feint, every pivot, every threat display cost her. Her milk had left her thirsty. Her muscles had worked too many nights without enough food. Her stomach gnawed at itself, empty and angry. Ash pressed into her, warm and fragile, and unaware of the math being done around him. A larger hyena stepped forward, and even in the half-light, Luna recognized the posture of command. This one moved with the confidence of survival. Scarred muzzle, torn ear, eyes that didn't flicker. The leader, the one who didn't need to prove anything. Red Jaw. The name was not something Luna knew, but the reserve staff did. The rangers had watched this hyena for months on camera, had noted how she positioned herself just out of reach in every conflict, how she let others test the danger first, how she never wasted a bite when she could win with patience. The red stain along her jaw, old blood, old clay, maybe both, had become her signature. Red Jaw paused, head slightly tilted, listening to Luna's breathing. Then she took one more step. Luna answered with a sound that rolled out of her chest. Low, deep, not a full roar, but a warning the canyon could feel. Her eyes blazed in the last light, and for a heartbeat she looked like she had always looked, a queen of muscle and will, a creature the world had been built to respect. The hyenas didn't respect her. They respected numbers. The circle tightened again, and Luna realized something that struck colder than fear. They weren't just surrounding her. They were guiding her, nudging, shaping the space, trying to force her away from the rocky dip where the dead animal lay, away from any cover, away from any advantage, into open ground, into the kind of chaos where a cub could be separated in a blink. Ash shifted, trying to peek out, curiosity flickering despite everything. Luna lowered her head and bumped him back hard enough to make the lesson stick. His tiny body stumbled, then settled again between her legs, his breath quickening as if his instincts finally caught up to his innocence. The sun slid lower. The shadows grew long, then longer, until the grass became a field of dark blades, and the hyenas seemed to multiply, appearing and disappearing with every flicker of light. Luna's throat tightened. The air smelled like dust and meat, and that sharp musky scent hyenas carried like damp for left in heat. Her mouth was dry. Her heart was steady, but only because a mother's heart had to be. If it broke rhythm, everything broke. She looked once, just once, over the line of teeth and eyes toward the direction she'd come from. The ridge, the smell of her pride, safety. It was too far. And even if she ran, her legs were longer, her body built for bursts. But Ash couldn't run like that. Not yet. If she ran, she would outpace him without meaning to. If she stayed, she would be fighting a storm with a single branch. The hyenas sensed her thinking. The circle tightened another inch. Red Jaw's head dipped. A signal. The pack shifted. Silent, synchronized, ready. Luna braced herself, claws biting into the earth, body angled into a shield. She lowered her chest over Ash like a roof, and in the dim light, her shadow swallowed him. If this was going to be the end, it would not be a quick end. Not while she still had breath. Not while she still had teeth. Her muscles coiled for the first strike. And in that suspended moment, just before everything broke into motion, she leaned her muzzle down toward the trembling warmth behind her leg, as if she could press courage into him through touch alone. "Stay behind me, Ash." The words were not sound so much as intention carried in the low vibration of Luna's chest. Ash didn't understand language yet, but he understood her. He pressed closer, small claws curling into the dust, his body trembling in a way that finally matched the danger around him. The hyenas didn't rush. That was the cruelest part. They knew she was tired. They could hear it in the subtle hitch of her breath. See it in the way her weight shifted just a tiny bit slower than it should have. Red Jaw took another step. Not close enough to strike, just close enough to make a point. A reminder that time was not Luna's ally. Luna pivoted, keeping her body between the pack and her cub. Her movements were careful now. No wasted threats, no dramatic lunges. Every ounce of energy was being measured, rationed like water in the desert. She knew the truth, even as she refused to accept it. If this became a long fight, she would lose. Ash whimpered, a thin sound that sliced straight through her. Luna's ears flicked back, and she answered him with a sharp huff, a correction, firm and immediate. Noise invited attention. Noise invited chaos. He quieted, instinct overriding fear, and she felt a flash of pride so sharp it almost hurt. Red Jaw circled wider, testing. Two others mirrored her on the opposite side, angling their bodies to block any sudden dash. They weren't just hunters. They were planners. Every movement was designed to strip Luna of options one by one until there was nothing left but collapse. Luna glanced toward the dead animal behind her, the half-eaten pronghorn, ribs shining pale in the fading light. That kill had bought her hours earlier in the day. Now it was buying her nothing at all. If anything, it had sealed her fate. She couldn't abandon it without turning her back. And turning her back meant exposing Ash for half a second too long. A younger hyena darted forward again, bolder this time, snapping at the air near Luna's side. Luna struck, not wildly, but precisely. Her paw connected with fur and bone, and the impact thudded through her shoulder. The hyena yelped and stumbled back, more surprised than hurt. The pack erupted in sound, laughter, yips, excited chatter. Not fear, excitement. They had felt her strength, and they had measured it. It wasn't enough. Luna's chest heaved once, twice. Her muscles burned now, lactic acid creeping in like poison. She tasted copper at the back of her throat, a reminder that even the strongest bodies had limits. She could hold them off for minutes, maybe longer, if luck stayed close. But luck was unpredictable, and mothers who relied on it didn't raise cubs to adulthood. Red Jaw stopped again, head low, eyes locked on Ash's faint outline beneath Luna's body. For the first time, Luna saw calculation shift into certainty. This was the moment. Luna's mind moved faster than her body ever could. Run. No. Fight. Already happening. Bluff. Useless. There was only one thing left. Positioning. She edged backward, inch by inch, trying to reach the shallow dip near the rocks where the ground dipped and rose again. If she could force the hyenas to come at her uphill, slow them even a little. The pack adjusted instantly. They closed in from the sides, cutting off her angle, tightening the space until the air itself felt crowded. Luna's tail lashed once, hard enough to sting. Her ears flattened completely now, and she let the sound out. A full roar this time, ripping from her chest and tearing across the canyon. The sound echoed off stone and scrub. A declaration older than fences, older than roads. For a heartbeat, it worked. The hyenas froze, startled despite themselves. Even Red Jaw hesitated, her weight shifting as she reassessed. A lion's roar still carried meaning even here, even now, but hesitation was not retreat. Red Jaw lifted her head and answered, not with fear, but with that awful broken laugh. The others joined in, the sound multiplying, surrounding Luna the way the pack itself did. Ash flinched at the noise, his small body pressing tighter against Luna's belly. She felt his heart racing through skin and fur, a fragile drum beating too fast. Luna lowered herself further, spreading her stance, making herself bigger, heavier, harder to knock aside. Her claws dug grooves into the earth. If they came now, she would take one down with her, maybe two. She would fight until her muscles tore and her breath failed. But she knew how this ended. She had seen bones scattered in dry washes. She had smelled the aftermath of fights. No one survived. The land did not mourn. It only remembered briefly in the way dust settled over everything. The light faded another degree, and with it Luna's margin for error. Night favored the pack. Night always did. Red Jaw shifted her weight forward. And then the ground trembled. Not the subtle vibration of paws hitting in unison. This was deeper, slower, a rolling pressure that traveled up through Luna's legs and into her chest. The hyenas felt it, too. Their laughter cut off mid-sound, heads snapping toward the source. Another step. Heavy, deliberate. Luna's breath caught, not in fear, but confusion. This was not something she recognized as threat or ally. It wasn't feline. It wasn't canine. It wasn't even something she could place in the usual map of danger her instincts carried. The tremor came again, stronger now, and dust lifted from the ground in a low cloud beyond the rise of rocks to the west. Red Jaw stiffened. For the first time since the circle began, uncertainty rippled through the pack. A few of the younger hyenas shifted backward, ears flicking, bodies angling away despite themselves. Whatever was coming was large, larger than any of them, larger than Luna. Luna didn't move. She couldn't afford to. Ash peeked out despite her earlier warning, his small head emerging just enough to see movement in the dust. Luna nudged him back with her chin, firm but gentle, her eyes never leaving the horizon. The tremors grew louder, closer. And then, through the settling dust, a massive silhouette began to take shape. Broad shoulders rising like a moving hill, a dark form crowned with sweeping horns that caught the last dying light of the sun. Luna stared, her muscles still coiled, her mind scrambling to adjust. The hyenas backed off a half step, their perfect circle warping for the first time. Something had entered the equation. Something none of them had planned for. The dust kept rising long after the ground stopped shaking, drifting across the grass in a slow, choking veil. Luna held her position, every muscle locked. Her body still shaped into a wall around Ash. Her instincts screamed for classification. Predator, rival, threat. But what emerged from the haze refused to fit any familiar shape. The silhouette grew clearer with each step. Broad, immense, a living mass of muscle and bone that moved with a weight the earth itself seemed to acknowledge. The sun's last sliver caught on the curve of enormous horns, blunted in their edges, worn smooth by years of use, by battles that hadn't needed witnesses. A heavy head. Swung once from side to side, not searching, not alarmed, simply aware. The hyenas reacted first. It wasn't panic. Red Jaw didn't allow panic. But the perfect geometry of the circle fractured. One hyena backed away, then another, their laughter dissolving into low, uncertain murmurs. Tails dropped, ears angled outward. The pack's attention, once razor-focused on Luna and her cub, bent sharply toward the newcomer. Luna breathed in deeply, testing the air. The scent was thick and unfamiliar. Earth, dry grass, old sweat, something heavy and unmistakably alive. Not meat, not blood, not hunger. Her confusion sharpened. The massive animal stepped fully into view, and the canyon seemed to shrink around it. A bison, a bull, larger than anything Luna had ever stood against, his shoulders rising like a cliff, his coat dark and coarse, scarred in places where fur refused to grow back. One horn bore a deep groove near its base, a wound that had healed ugly and permanent. This was no young challenger. This was something that had survived. The bison stopped. He didn't charge. He didn't bellow. He simply planted his hooves into the dirt, lowered his head slightly, and faced the hyenas. The gesture was subtle but unmistakable, an assertion of space, a refusal to yield it. The air shifted. Red Jaw studied him, her head tilting just as it had moments earlier with Luna. Calculation flickered behind her eyes. A lone lioness with a cub was a risk worth taking. A fully grown bull bison, even one standing alone, was something else entirely. The younger hyenas edged farther back now, their confidence leaking away. They had teeth, speed, numbers, but this creature had mass, momentum, and weapons designed to end fights before they truly began. One wrong move, one mistimed rush, and bones would shatter like dry twigs. Luna didn't relax. Not yet. She had lived long enough to know that new danger didn't cancel old danger. It complicated it. The bison stood between her and the pack. Yes, but not close enough to feel like shelter. He hadn't acknowledged her, hadn't looked at Ash. He was simply there, a living barrier that hadn't existed a minute before. Ash shifted, curiosity tugging at him despite everything. Luna nudged him back again, more gently this time, her focus locked on the bison's massive form. The bull moved at last, one step forward. The ground answered him with a dull thud that echoed through Luna's bones. The hyenas flinched as one. Red Jaw held her ground, but her tail flicked, a sign of irritation, perhaps even doubt. Another step. The bison's breath huffed from his nostrils in a low, steady burst. He wasn't posturing. He wasn't threatening. He was advancing with the calm certainty of something that did not expect resistance to matter. Red Jaw made a sound. Short, sharp, a command. The pack shifted, spreading wider, testing angles. Classic maneuver. They would not confront the bison head-on. They would distract him, draw him away, create an opening where speed could matter more than size. Luna saw it immediately. Her heart kicked hard against her ribs. If the bison moved too far, if he turned to chase, the space he left behind would be filled instantly with hyenas, with teeth, with chaos. Ash would have no chance. The bison seemed to sense the change as well. He stopped again, hooves digging in, and swung his massive head, not toward the hyenas probing his side, but back toward Luna. Just enough for one dark eye to catch the fading light. For a moment, predator and prey regarded each other. There was no recognition, no understanding in the human sense, but there was awareness of position, of vulnerability, of something fragile pressed close behind Luna's legs. The bison snorted softly and shifted his stance. Instead of advancing, he angled his body sideways. Broadside turned deliberately toward Luna and Ash. Horns now tracking the hyena's movement without fully committing to any one direction. He was placing himself not between danger and prize, but around them, expanding the space that belonged to neither pack nor lioness. It was an adjustment so small it might have meant nothing, but it meant everything. The hyenas hesitated again, their rhythm broken for the second time. Red Jaw's lips curled, teeth flashing, frustration bleeding through her control. She darted forward in a sudden feint, testing the bison's reaction. He answered instantly. The bull lunged, not in a full charge, but with explosive force, his head dropping as his horns cut through the space Red Jaw had just occupied. The movement sent a shock wave through the ground and the pack alike. Red Jaw skidded back, dirt spraying, her confidence shaken. A younger hyena panicked and ran too close. The bison's horn clipped her shoulder, Not a full hit, but enough. The impact lifted her off her feet and slammed her into the ground with a yelp that cut clean through the canyon air. She scrambled away, limping, the lesson written into her bones. Silence followed. The pack pulled back several steps now. The circle stretched thin and uneven. Their laughter was gone. Their voices dropped to low, irritated murmurs. Luna felt her muscles tremble, not from fear, but from the strain of holding herself ready when relief dared to whisper. She didn't let it. Not yet. The bison remained where he was, sides rising and falling steadily, his attention still split between the hyenas and the lioness behind him. He had not chased. He had not pursued advantage. He was holding ground. The sun slipped fully below the horizon, leaving the canyon washed in deep blue shadow. Night crept closer, but the rules had changed. The pack knew it. Luna knew it. Even Ash seemed to sense it, his small body relaxing a fraction, his breathing slowing as the immediate threat receded. Red Jaw stared at the bison for a long, unreadable moment. Then she turned her head slightly and made another sharp sound, different this time. Not an order to attack, an order to wait. The hyenas backed off, forming a loose semicircle at a distance, eyes never leaving the bison's massive form. They were not done. Not yet. Night was still young. Luna stayed frozen, heart pounding, her world narrowed to the space carved out by a creature she did not understand. Behind her, Ash pressed into her warmth, safe for the moment. And in front of her, the bison stood, silent, immovable, and utterly unexpected, while the canyon held its breath. Night settled over Red Canyon with deceptive calm. The sky cooled from bruised blue to ink, and the first stars appeared, sharp, distant, indifferent. The hyenas melted into the darkness just far enough to feel gone, but not far enough to be absent. Luna could still hear them. Soft footfalls, a breath too close, the faint scrape of claws on stone. They were waiting, and waiting was what they did best. The bison did not move. He stood like a piece of the land that had decided to wake up. Broad back, steady, head angled low, horns tracking motion more than shape. His breathing was slow, controlled, a deep rhythm that grounded the space around him. Luna realized with a jolt that he was not guarding her out of confusion or fear. He was reading the field just as she was, just as Red Jaw was. Different minds, same language. The first test came from the left. Two hyenas slipped forward in tandem, low and fast. Their approach angled not toward the bison's horns, but toward his blind side. A classic maneuver. Draw attention. Create a seam. Exploit it. The bison answered without turning fully. He shifted his weight and stamped once. A sharp percussive strike that sent a vibration through the ground. Dust leaped. The hyenas skidded to a halt. Startled more than afraid. Recalibrating. Red Jaw adjusted immediately. The pack spread wider, thinning the line, turning it elastic. They began to move in arcs, never straight, weaving in and out of the bison's peripheral vision. The idea was simple. Make him choose. Force him to commit. The moment he did, the space behind him would belong to teeth. Luna felt the trap forming, and her pulse quickened. She edged backward a half step, pulling Ash with her, careful not to break the fragile geometry the bison had created. Her muscles ached from holding tension for so long, and the night pressed in, promising speed and confusion. The bison sensed the change. He took one deliberate step back toward Luna, not away from the pack, widening the protected pocket. It was an extraordinary choice. By giving up ground, he denied the hyenas what they wanted most: separation. Red Jaw snarled, a flash of impatience. She split the pack. 3 hyenas rushed from the right, loud and aggressive, snapping and laughing, while 2 more slid in low from the left, nearly silent. The canyon erupted into motion. Luna's breath caught. Ash stiffened against her. The bison pivoted. He did not chase the loud ones. He swung toward the quiet pair, head dropping, horns sweeping in a wide lethal arc. 1 hyena leaped clear. The other wasn't fast enough. The horn struck her side and sent her tumbling, a rag doll thrown across stone. She hit the ground hard and did not rise immediately. The loud trio yelped and scattered, the faint collapsing into retreat. The pack's confidence wavered again, frustration bleeding through discipline. Luna seized the moment. She surged forward 2 steps, not to attack, but to close distance with the bison, tightening the protective space until Ash was nearly beneath the bull's shadow. Her movement was risky, but necessary. If the hyenas tried again, they would have to come through both of them. Red Jaw re-evaluated. She circled wide, eyes flicking between Luna's claws and the bison's horns, recalculating costs. The pack's energy had shifted. What should have been a swift dismantling was turning into a war of attrition, and attrition favored the one who could afford time. Red Jaw tested again, this time with deception. A sudden burst of movement from the rear. 2 hyenas darting toward the dead animal, snapping and tugging, dragging bone across stone. The noise was deliberate, designed to pull attention, to awaken instinct. Luna's head snapped toward the sound before she could stop it. That half-second was enough. Red Jaw lunged. She came fast and low, aiming not for Luna, but for the space just beyond the bison's side, the seam they'd been working all night to create. Luna reacted on pure reflex, slashing outward. But Red Jaw was already past her reach. The bison moved not forward, not sideways. He charged diagonally, a brutal, unstoppable burst of mass that collapsed the opening before it could exist. His shoulder slammed into Red Jaw mid-leap. The impact cracked through the canyon like a gunshot. Red Jaw flew, skidding across dirt and rock, her laughter replaced by a sharp, furious cry. The pack broke formation, not in panic, but in recognition. This was no longer a calculation they could win without losses they could not afford. They regrouped at a distance, voices low, movements tight, eyes burning with frustration. The bison did not pursue. He stopped after 3 strides, hooves digging in, chest heaving now for the first time. He turned his head slightly, keeping the pack in view, but his body angled back toward Luna and Ash. The message was unmistakable. This ground was not for sale. Luna stood trembling, not from fear, but from the aftermath of adrenaline and exhaustion colliding. Her legs felt hollow, her mouth tasted dry and sharp. She licked Ash's head once, a quick grounding gesture, and felt his small body relax beneath her touch. The night deepened. The hyenas withdrew another few yards, forming a loose ring beyond the bison's immediate reach. They laid down in the grass, some resting, some watching, none leaving. They would wait for fatigue, for a misstep, for dawn if necessary. Luna knew the truth now. This was no quick rescue. This was a standoff. The bison shifted his stance and planted himself, legs squared. Head low, horns still. He was breathing harder now, but his resolve did not waver. Luna studied him in the darkness, the outline of his massive form etched against the stars, and felt something unfamiliar stir beneath the layers of instinct and fear. Trust, not complete, not blind but enough. She lowered herself slowly, carefully, keeping her body coiled and ready even as she brought her chest closer to the ground. Ash crawled beneath her, curling against her belly the way he did when sleep tugged at him despite danger. The bison remained standing. He would not rest. Not yet. The canyon held the three of them in a fragile balance. Predators waiting beyond the dark, a mother guarding what she loved, and a force of nature standing between them, choosing patience over pursuit. For the first time since dusk, Luna believed they might see morning. The canyon did not grow quiet all at once. It softened instead, like a held breath finally released in careful stages. The hyenas remained. Luna could still sense them scattered in the tall grass, their shapes dissolving into darkness. But their energy had changed. The sharp edge was gone. What lingered was patience, thin and watchful, stretched across the night like a net waiting to be tested again. The bison stood at the center of it all, immovable. Moonlight revealed the rough texture of his coat, the uneven lines of old scars, the slow rise and fall of his massive chest. He had not lowered his head since the last charge. His muscles were tight with effort, but his posture carried no hesitation. He faced outward, horns angled toward the shadows, claiming the space as if he had always belonged there. Luna lowered herself another fraction, her body finally touching the cool earth. Every instinct fought the decision. Rest in the open. Rest with danger close. Rest with a stranger standing guard. But exhaustion was no longer something she could command away. It pressed down on her limbs, heavy and insistent, stealing sharpness from her movements. Ash responded instantly. As soon as her chest dipped, he crawled fully beneath her, curling into the familiar curve of her belly. His breathing slowed, small ribs rising and falling in a rhythm that pulled at something deep in Luna's chest. He had cried himself dry earlier. Now sleep claimed him without ceremony, the way only the very young can sleep, completely, trustingly, unaware of how narrow the margin between safety and loss truly was. Luna remained awake. Her eyes stayed open, tracking every sound, every shift in the grass. She counted heartbeats. She listened to the bison's breathing, grounding herself in its steady cadence. The night brought new sounds. An owl calling from the rocks. The whisper of wind through sage. The distant hum of insects returning now that movement had slowed. Life continued around them, indifferent to the standoff unfolding beneath the stars. The hyenas tested the silence. A low call drifted in from the left. Not a challenge, not a threat, a question. Another answered from farther back, then another. The sounds passing through the dark like ripples. The pack was checking itself, reaffirming presence, reminding Luna and the bison that they had not gone far. The bison shifted his weight. The movement was subtle, almost gentle, but it sent a clear message. His hooves dug in. His head lowered a fraction. The calls faded. Luna exhaled slowly, the tension in her shoulders loosening just enough to sting. She lowered her head to Ash and licked the crown of his small skull. Once, twice, cleaning dust, reinforcing scent, anchoring him to her. He stirred, made a tiny sound, then settled again, utterly unafraid. That frightened her more than the hyenas ever had. Trust was dangerous. Trust was earned in tiny amounts so small they were almost invisible, and then lost all at once. Luna had learned that lesson early in life when alliances shifted without warning and familiarity did not guarantee safety. Yet here she was, allowing sleep to creep closer with a creature at her back she did not understand. The bison did not look at her again. He did not need to. His attention remained fixed on the dark perimeter, on the possibility of movement, on the memory of the pack's tactics. He had chosen his role, and he held to it without deviation. Time passed strangely. Minutes stretched, then folded back on themselves. Luna's eyes burned. Her muscles twitched with fatigue. At some point, the ache became dull enough to ignore, replaced by a deeper heaviness that pulled at her consciousness. She fought it. She told herself she would close her eyes for a breath. Just a breath. The ground was cool beneath her chest. Ash's warmth pressed upward, steady and alive. The bison's presence loomed like a wall of stone behind her, solid and unwavering. Her eyes closed, not fully, not the surrender of deep sleep, but enough. The world narrowed to sensation, the smell of dust and grass, the slow cadence of breathing, the faint hum of night. Her mind drifted, caught between awareness and rest, balanced on a fragile edge. In that in-between space, memory stirred. She remembered the first time she had felt truly alone, long before Ash existed. A night spent apart from the pride after a fight, blood drying on her side, listening to unfamiliar sounds, and learning what it meant to rely on herself alone. She remembered how the land had felt then, vast, indifferent, unforgiving. Tonight it felt different, not kinder, just altered. A sound snapped her eyes open. Movement rippled through the grass to the east. Too slow to be an attack, too deliberate to ignore. Luna lifted her head, muscles coiling again despite exhaustion. The bison reacted instantly. He pivoted, placing his bulk between Luna and the movement. Horns sweeping through empty air. The shadow resolved into a single hyena, limping slightly, curiosity outweighing caution. She stopped short, eyes bright, body tense. The bison stamped once. The hyena froze. Reassessed, then backed away without sound, melting back into the night. Luna watched until the grass stilled again. Her heart slowed. She lowered her head once more, this time allowing her eyes to close again without resistance. The decision felt monumental, like stepping off a ledge and trusting the ground to rise and meet her. Sleep took her, not deep, not long, but real. She dreamed of warmth and movement, of walking without pain, of Ash running ahead of her across open ground without stumbling. She dreamed of space, wide and safe and free of edges. Through it all, the bison remained awake. The hours crawled toward dawn. The moon shifted, shadows thinned. The hyenas did not press their luck again. Hunger weighed against risk. And for once, risk outweighed reward. When Luna stirred, the first hint of gray touched the sky. Her body ached in new ways, stiff from rest instead of tension. Ash yawned beneath her, stretching tiny limbs, alive and whole. She lifted her head slowly and looked back. The bison was still there, standing, guarding, unmoved. The night had passed. Morning did not arrive with celebration. It came quietly, the way survival often does, without apology, without promise. Pale light slid over Red Canyon, thinning the shadows and pulling detail back into the land. The grass glistened faintly with dew. Distant birds tested their voices. The night released its grip inch by inch. Luna rose slowly, joints stiff, muscles sore in a way that told her the danger had passed, but not been forgotten. Ash stirred beneath her, blinking into the new light, then wriggled free with the unsteady confidence of a cub who had slept deeply and dreamed of nothing at all. He sneezed, startled by his own sound, and Luna huffed softly in response, a private reassurance. The hyenas were gone, not vanished. Luna could still smell them faintly on the breeze, but withdrawn, their patience finally outweighed by hunger elsewhere. Red Canyon belonged to the morning again, to hooves and wings and cautious movement. Behind her, the bison shifted for the first time since dawn. He took a step back, then another, creating space rather than closing it. His posture softened, head lifting slightly as the urgency drained from his stance. He did not approach Luna. He did not inspect Ash. He simply acknowledged the change in the world and responded to it. Luna turned fully, facing him now. They stood like that for a long moment. Lioness and bison, neither advancing, neither retreating. Luna's instincts catalogued him carefully. Strength immense but controlled. Awareness sharp. Intent finished. Whatever had drawn him into the night's conflict had released him with the sunrise. Ash, however, had no such restraint. He took 3 clumsy steps forward, tail flicking, curiosity blazing brighter than caution. Luna snapped her head toward him, a sharp sound in her throat, but he had already stopped, close enough to see the bison's massive legs, far enough to be safe. He sat back on his haunches and stared, eyes wide, ears tilted forward. The bison looked down. For the first time, he acknowledged the cub directly, not with menace, not with interest, just a brief, steady look that lingered no longer than necessary. Then he turned his head away, as if understanding that some distances were meant to remain intact. Luna felt something settle in her chest, not relief, not gratitude in any simple sense, but recognition. The moment had passed. The debt, if there had been one, could not be repaid in kind. The land did not operate on balance sheets. The bison took one last step back, then angled his body toward the western rise. Without ceremony, without looking again, he began to walk away. His gait was slow but sure. Each step measured, unhurried. The ground seemed to give way for him, grass bending, dust lifting gently around his hooves. Ash rose and took a step after him. Luna blocked him instantly, placing her paw firmly across his path. Ash protested with a small sound, confused more than upset. Luna lowered her head and met his gaze, her expression leaving no room for argument. The bison was not theirs to follow. Whatever had connected them belonged to a single night and nothing more. Ash sat back down. The bison crested the rise and disappeared from view, leaving only the imprint of his passing and the echo of something larger than instinct lingering in the air. They did not linger. Luna moved quickly once the sun fully cleared the horizon. Urgency returning in a new form. Safety now meant distance. She guided Ash eastward toward the familiar ridges and scent lines of her pride. The journey was slow, broken by frequent stops, but it was steady. Each step carried them farther from the place where night had nearly claimed everything. The pride accepted them without question. Familiar faces emerged from the rocks, scents overlapping in a way that eased the tight knot Luna had carried for days. There were greetings, rubs of heads, soft chuffs, the shared language of belonging. Ash was inspected, sniffed, gently nudged by aunts and cousins he did not yet recognize as such. He squeaked in surprise, then bounced back, delighted by the sudden abundance of warmth and attention. Life resumed. Seasons turned as they always did. Ash grew. He grew in the way all lion cubs do, too fast for the eye to track. each day subtly reshaping him. His legs lengthened, his clumsy steps smoothed into confident strides, his coat lost the softness of infancy, his body filling out with muscle and intent. He learned to stalk, to pounce, to fail and try again. He learned the sounds of his pride, the rhythms of hunts, the boundaries that mattered. But there was something different about him. Luna noticed it first when the pride encountered bison herds grazing near the edges of the reserve. The other cubs reacted as expected, ducking low, sticking close, reading the giants as obstacles to be avoided. Ash did not. He watched from a respectful distance. Posture relaxed, eyes curious rather than fearful. He never approached, never challenged, but he did not bristle the way the others did. It was as if some part of him had catalogued bison differently. Not prey, not threat, something else. Luna tried to correct him at first, issuing low warnings, guiding him back when his attention lingered too long. He obeyed without resistance, but the curiosity never fully left his gaze. Over time, she stopped correcting what was not dangerous. Instincts, she had learned, could carry memory in ways even she did not fully understand. Years passed. Ash grew into his strength, his movements confident, his presence undeniable. His mane began to darken at the edges, signaling the slow transition toward adulthood. He tested himself against his peers, learned restraint as much as force, learned when to push and when to yield. And then one afternoon, when the heat lay heavy over Red Canyon, and the pride rested in scattered shade, Ash froze. Luna followed his gaze. Across the open grass, moving with unmistakable weight and patience, a lone bison approached the water. Older now, his steps slower, his horns marked by time. The distance was great, but recognition did not require closeness. Ash stood very still. So did Luna. The memory rose between them, silent and intact, carried not by thought, but by something deeper. The mark of a night survived. The imprint of protection given without reason. The bison drank and lifted his head, scanning the land. For a moment, only a moment, his gaze aligned with Ash's. Then he turned away, and the world continued as it always had. But nothing, not really, was the same. Time thinned everything it touched. The years had taken their turns quietly, sanding edges, deepening lines, reshaping bodies that once seemed permanent. Red Canyon looked the same to an untrained eye. Same ridges, same wind-carved gullies, same sky stretched endlessly overhead. But Luna knew better. So did Ash. Ash was no longer the restless cub who had once stumbled in the grass beneath her belly. He had grown into his weight, into the certainty of his presence. His mane had darkened and thickened, framing a face marked by calm authority rather than impatience. Other lions deferred to him now without challenge. His voice carried, not because it was louder, but because it no longer needed to prove itself. Luna watched him from a distance as she rested in the shade of a low juniper. Her body slower now, her movements measured. Age had not weakened her so much as it had clarified her priorities. She no longer chased unnecessary fights. She conserved energy. She observed. It was during one of those quiet afternoons when the heat pressed low and the pride lay scattered in loose, breathing shapes across the canyon floor that Ash stopped moving. He had been walking toward the water with the casual confidence of a leader surveying his land. Then, without warning, his steps slowed, then ceased altogether. His tail stilled, his ears tilted forward, not sharply, not alarmed, attentive. Luna followed his line of sight. At first, she saw nothing out of place. Heat shimmered above the grass. A few pronghorn grazed at a distance. The land held its familiar stillness. Then she saw him. The bison moved alone, emerging from behind a rise, with a patience that spoke of long journeys and no need for haste. His coat was lighter now, grayed at the edges. His shoulders no longer rose with the same effortless power, and his gait carried the slight unevenness of a body that had absorbed decades of weight and conflict. But he was unmistakable. Graves. The name, though never spoken aloud, existed in Luna's memory like a scar, faded, but permanent. She felt the past surface without effort. Dust in her throat, Ash's tiny heartbeat beneath her chest, the way the night had bent itself around that massive form, standing guard. Ash took a single step forward, then stopped. There was no challenge in his posture, no territorial display. He simply stood, head lifted, watching the bison approach the water. The distance between them was wide enough to remain safe, narrow enough to feel intentional. The bison drank slowly. When he lifted his head, water dripping from his muzzle, his gaze swept the land with habitual caution. It paused when it reached Ash. For a long moment, neither moved. The connection, if it existed, was not dramatic. There was no rush of recognition, no shared gesture that could be translated into story or spectacle. There was only stillness. Two animals shaped by the same land, bound by a single night. Neither could fully recall in detail. Yet neither had ever truly forgotten. Luna held her breath. Ash lowered himself to the ground. It was not submission. It was not weakness. It was a deliberate choice to reduce his presence, to remove threat from the space between them. The other lions noticed the movement, but did not intervene. They trusted Ash's judgment now, even when they did not understand it. The bison shifted his weight. He did not approach. He did not retreat. He turned his head slightly, presenting his profile, an old habit of animals who had learned that showing strength did not always require confrontation. The gesture was subtle, but Luna felt its weight settle into her bones. This was not a meeting of equals in power. It was a meeting of survivors. Minutes passed. The sun crept lower, warming the rock beneath Luna's body. A breeze moved through the grass, carrying familiar scents. Home, water, dust, life continuing without pause. At last, the bison took a step back from the water. He stood there for a moment longer, his breath audible in the quiet, then turned his body toward the western valley. The movement was slow, careful, deliberate. Each step carried finality without drama. Ash rose. He watched until the bison's massive shape crested the ridge and slipped from sight, swallowed by distance and terrain. He did not follow. He did not call. He simply stood. Mane lifting slightly in the breeze, eyes tracking the place where the land had closed again. Luna released the breath she had been holding. Ash turned and walked back toward the pride, his movements unhurried. When he passed her, he brushed his side lightly against her shoulder, a gesture of acknowledgement, of shared memory, of something unspoken but understood. The meeting had ended. There would be no more. The land accepted that truth without ceremony. Shadows lengthened. The pride shifted toward evening routines. Life continued forward as it always did. But somewhere beneath the surface of instinct and habit, something had been sealed. A circle quietly closed. The land did not mark the moment. There was no shift in the wind when Graves disappeared beyond the ridge. No sound that announced an ending. Red Canyon continued as it always had. Sunlight sliding across stone. Insects humming back into rhythm. Distant hooves tracing familiar paths. To the world at large, nothing meaningful had changed, but Luna felt it. She felt it in the way her chest loosened in the quiet release of something she had carried for years without realizing it had weight. Age had slowed her body, dulled the sharp edge of her strength, but it had sharpened her sense of meaning. She knew endings when they passed, even when they came without ceremony. Ash led the pride as the day unfolded. His movements calm, his decisions measured. The younger lions followed him without question, not because he demanded it, but because his presence invited trust. He had learned somewhere beyond instinct that leadership was not forged only in dominance, but in restraint. The cubs played near the shade of the rocks, tumbling and biting gently, their small bodies full of energy that knew nothing of the night when death had circled so close. Ash watched them for a long moment, his gaze softer than the others. When one of them strayed too far toward the open grass, he rose and guided it back with a gentle nudge, not a snarl. Luna observed from her resting place. She no longer intervened unless necessary. That was the way of it. Mothers did not lead forever. They shaped, then stepped back, allowing what they had protected to become something new. As the sun dipped lower, the pride settled into evening routines. Ash positioned sentries. The hunters moved with quiet efficiency. The land breathed around them, ancient and unbothered. Luna closed her eyes. Her thoughts did not drift to the hyenas. They no longer mattered. Hunger, threat, struggle, those were constants. They did not define a life. They merely tested it. Instead, her mind returned to a single night long ago, to dust and fear and the impossible weight of survival, pressing in from all sides, to the sound of hooves shaking the ground when there should have been none, to the moment she had lowered her body to the earth, and chosen to trust what she could not explain. She understood now that the night had not been about rescue. It had been about interruption. A break in the brutal efficiency of nature. A pause where something else had slipped through. Not kindness as humans defined it. Not strategy, not instinct alone, but a choice made in a space where choices were rarely given room to exist. Graves had not saved her because he had to. He had saved her because he could. The difference mattered. Days passed, then weeks. Luna's steps grew shorter. Her rest grew deeper. One morning she did not rise when the pride moved on. Ash stayed with her, pressing close, his massive body curved protectively around hers the way she had once curved around him. The land accepted her quietly. There was no struggle, no fear, just the steady release of breath and weight and time. Luna became part of the canyon she had walked all her life, dust, memory, nourishment for what would come next. Ash remained there long after the others had gone. When he finally rose, he did not roar. He did not challenge the sky. He simply turned back toward the pride and continued forward, carrying what she had given him in ways no one could see. Seasons shifted. Storms reshaped the gullies. Grass burned and returned. New cubs were born. Learned to walk, learned to fear, learned to trust. Ash grew older, his mane thickening, his movements slowing. Younger males tested him. Some he repelled. Some he yielded to when the time came. Leadership passed as it always does. Ash did not fight the ending when it arrived. He left the pride one quiet night, moving into the open land with the same calm certainty that had guided him all his life. He survived as long as strength allowed. When it no longer did, he rested beneath a familiar ridge, watching the stars rise one final time. The land accepted him, too. Years later, long after Ash and Luna and Graves had returned fully to dust and memory, the canyon still carried something of them. Bison herds paused more often near the old waterline. Lions moved through the area with an unusual calm. Cubs grew curious rather than reckless. No rule explained it. No instinct demanded it. But the land remembered. It remembered a night when violence had been interrupted, when a circle had broken, when survival had chosen an unexpected shape. And perhaps that was the quiet truth written into every living system, waiting to be noticed, that even in the most unforgiving places, the story is not only about who takes and who falls. Sometimes it is about who stands. If this story moved you even just a little, take a moment and let us know. Simply type 1 in the comments if you believe animals are capable of compassion, or 0 if you think survival is the only rule of the wild. Your voice matters more than you might think. And if you'd like to hear more true emotional stories like this one, stories that remind us we're all connected in ways we don't always understand, please consider subscribing. We have many more unforgettable moments from the natural world waiting for you. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.